Give me pen and paper.
Good evening, Prof.
Good evening.
Okay,
Good
we will start shortly. I just want to be sure that you the network. I hope it's not fluctuating.
Well, for now it's stable, but if it has problem, I switch to another one.
Okay, all right, so no problem. We'll
It should be
soon
stable.
start.
I'm actually in the office, so.
Okay, we'll
But
start
if
very
it has
shortly.
issue, I'll connect it.
Okay, sir. We'll start shortly. All right. And Prof, I think we are good to go.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, good. Yeah, okay. Good evening, sir. Okay,
Good evening.
good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 27th edition of our monthly program Inside the Arena. Today, Inside the Arena, the very last for the year 2023, is a very distinguished professor of agricultural engineering who has made tremendous contributions to the development of the engineering profession and practice in all the sectors of our economy. He has borne responsibilities. He is the current acting president of the African University of Science and Technology here in Abuja, and also was the Director General of the Raw Material Research and Development Council. At a time, we are going to get the details in the course of this program. It's my pleasure to welcome inside the arena the president of the Nigerian Academy of Engineering, our very distinguished engineer, Professor AZIKIWE Peter ONWUALU, fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Engineering, and fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Science. You're welcome, sir. You can unmute your mic. You are a co-host.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Ben, and good evening, everybody.
All right. I still remain your host, Engineer Ben O.C. Oko. Thank you. Prof, quickly, let us take you through the rules before we commence the program. We have 3 segments of this program, and the first segment is what we call the direct free kick. And direct free kick is the segment where all the questions are directed to you by the host, and you respond to the questions. And the second segment of the program is what we call the corner kick, where the participants will also ask you questions concerning your life and any area of your life. They feel free to ask you questions. But we have a caveat to that. When we consider any question inappropriate, we flag it, and you will be exempted from answering the question. Then the final segment of this program is what we call the extra time. It is the time when we also put the participants on the hot seat by asking them questions about your life, about yourself. And the fastest finger, the first participant to send in the correct question or the correct answer will win a prize. And today, the lucky participant will be going home with a phone, a brand new phone. We are going to be showing that before the end of the program. Thank you very much. And once again, we welcome all of you to the very last edition of Inside the Arena for the year 2023. Thank you, Prof. Prof, in a nutshell, tell us, who is Professor AZIKIWE Peter ONWUALU? Tell us about your birth, your background, education and family background. And most importantly, how come the name AZIKIWE?
That's a good one. Thank you very much. Like you rightly introduced me, my name is AZIKIWE Peter ONWUALU. I was born sometime in 1959, so you can begin to see why my middle name is AZIKIWE. 1959 would have been when Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe was at the peak of his political career. So I'm sure my parents wanted somebody who may become another Azikiwe in future. And I also come from a town that is just close to Onitsha. I come from Oba in Anambra State, Demli South local government area. I was born in that town, just a few kilometers from Onitsha, between Onitsha and the Nnewi. And I grew up in that community for some years. I was born into the family of the late John and late Mrs. Beatrice ONWUALU from Oba. My father was a primary school teacher and also a church teacher, what we call catechist in the Catholic Church. And so you can imagine that my background, I grew up mostly in a school environment, primary school environment, of course, but also from around the church environment also. Now that saw me taking my primary school education in one or two primary schools as I moved with my father on transfers. One of them, primary school in Oba, that is a Omogali United Primary School. I was also at St. George's Primary School in Orifite in Anambra State. They eventually went to secondary school at Merchants of Life School Oba, from where I graduated and went to University of Nigeria, Nsukka, to have my first and second degree, and then the third degree, the PhD from Technical University of Nova Scotia in Canada. So in summary, I'm a very simple engineer, married to only one wife, with 4 children, 4 wonderful children. Incidentally, the last 3 of these children graduated just this year. So you can see how happy I am to be exiting from the group of people who pay school fees. So that's simply who I am. I'm sure as we proceed, we'll get to know more.
Okay. What you had your first and second degree in agricultural engineering, both in UNN and at the time when many people were moving to the United Kingdom to have their careers maybe to further their careers, have their PhD, mainly what was in vogue was United Kingdom. Why the choice of Canada?
Yes, at the time I graduated, that was 1982, a number of things happened. I was already tired of being in the Southeast, so I was actually planning to move to Ahmadu Bello University to do my master's. But maybe it's providence or the way things happen. The University of Nigeria at the time had a policy that if you make a first class, you'll be retained as a graduate assistant. So immediately after youth service, I wanted to run away to ABU. When I got to ABU, I was also offered the same thing, the same graduate assistantship. Then I came back to UNN to collect referees' reports, and then my senior colleagues, the heads of department, said no. The head of department said no. There's automatic employment for you. And so I started as a graduate assistant at UNN. Now, as you would expect, being a young man, part of the thing was I had actually decided that I was going to be an academic. So the issue was, where would I train? So because I was offered this graduate assistantship, I did a master's. As I was doing that, I was converted to assistant lecturer. And I felt I had seen enough of UNN. And so I was looking for where to go. Like you rightly expressed, I was interested in going to the UK, especially I was targeting a Cranfield at the time. But when the scholarships started coming, it took quite some time though. We were writing, looking for scholarships. Eventually, after 3 years of looking for scholarships for PhD, about 3 or 4 came at the same time. And so I was battling with where to go. So your question is quite apt. Why did I actually had an offer to go to UK on scholarship also. But the package that Canada gave me was quite irresistible. This was a Canadian International Development Agency through one of my late mentor, engineer Professor Anazodo, and also engineer Professor Dibo. These were 2 great engineers that mentored me seriously. So through them, I was able to secure this scholarship to Canada, and it came with full package. I was on as a graduate assistant with the scholarship. The university also offered me study leave with pay for the next 4 years I was going to be in Canada. And then the package was also better than what the UK university gave me. So basically, it's about looking at what is better for me. And so I took the option of Canada. Of course, those of us who did geography in secondary school, you know that Canada has very interesting geography. And so I also look forward to see what I read in geography about North America. And so that took me to Canada. Apart from that, the other interesting thing was that the scholarship that the Canadian International Development Agency gave also included package that when you finish the PhD, you will also be entitled to visits back to your university in Canada. So, but the British one was, it just ended with scholarship. So that was how I found myself in Nova Scotia, Canada, Technical University of Nova Scotia in Halifax, Canada. That was 1987 when I went for that PhD.
Okay, let me ask you. I think I missed it before I asked this question. Why did you choose agricultural engineering?
Yes, another interesting question. As I said, I grew up, my father was a primary school teacher. I didn't talk about what my mother was doing. Actually, my mother was a farmer. And so in most cases, my mother was in a village in Oba, being a peasant farmer, while my father was my father was teaching in primary schools. And what was the scenario was that those of us who are the male children will go with our father to the school where he was teaching in the nearby town or community. And then weekends we'll come back to the village, our own village. and our mother stayed, and she was just an illiterate farmer. So most times during vacations, in fact, at some point, when I even entered secondary school, I was a day student. So I was also growing up in the community. And apart from joining my father, I was also joining my mother in farming, a very serious farming. Anybody here who knows Oba very well would know that as you leave Onitsha heading to Newi on Owerri Road, you have an expanse of land. Of course, now that land has been taken over by urbanization. See all kinds of buildings springing up there. But that was our farmland. And I would accompany my mother with my senior. We are 9 in the family, and I'm number 8. So I had senior sisters and senior brothers. And we would go to the farm and work the whole day. And then by the time we finish working the whole day, they will the senior ones will carry firewood. Myself, I would have taken fodder for my goats, and we'll carry all these things back to the village. You see the environment. So I was asking myself, why should people be working? And at the end of every day's work, you look at the land you have been able to cultivate with your hoe. It's really nothing. And so I really, really pitied my mother. This woman will work. And in fact, it showed up towards the end of her life when she became old, the issue of waist pain and all that. And me, I knew it was all the years of working with hand tools. So right from the time where I was heading to class 5 in secondary school, I kept asking myself, shouldn't there be a better way to do farm work? I'm not now going to talk about the processing, because my mother was also processing cassava. We soak it near the stream, and then we manually process it into cassava, and then eventually, you know how you prepare cassava manually and so on. So I kept asking myself, why should people suffer to produce food and also to process food, and even to carry the food on your head? So at the time we were filling entrance to university, at that time there was no JAM, so you have to take entrance for each university. And so when I was filling the forms, I saw UNN. Of course, I picked UNN. My father believed UNN was University of Nigeria was the only university. And then I filled agric engineering. And the way my school was structured, that is merchant supply school at the time, as you proceed to the higher level, the first 30 students will be in class A. So I was in class 5A. And everybody in class 5A at the time would either be filling medicine, law, and so on, depending on your area. And then in engineering at the time, everybody would have been filling civil engineering at that time. That was the in thing then. So when everybody in the class saw agric engineering, actually it became fun. Some people were even making jokes. What are you going to be doing with agric engineering? You'll be in the farm and so on. But actually inside me, I was telling myself that I need to find a way to contribute towards solving the problem of drudgery in agriculture. And so that was actually the main reason. And so when I filled it, I showed my father. He said, "Are you sure you want to do this course?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Look, I don't have money to give you to buy form for another university. So if you know you are going to, it's only one university entrance exam you will take. At that time, you would have taken UNN, taken UNIPEN, taken UI, and then whichever works for you." He said he was going to give me money for only one form. I said, "This is the course I want to." And honestly, that was what was at the back of my mind. And I filled the form, took the entrance exam. And one day, the postmaster from our post office came in his bicycle to my house, to our house in the village, with a newspaper and said, that he saw my name among those admitted to University of Nigeria to study agricultural engineering. So basically, it's an interest that started right from when I was a kid.
Who was your best friend at Merchant of Light, Oba?
I had quite a number of friends. I think I'm seeing one or two of them online, but my best
Interesting.
friend is late now. Is one engineer Chuka Bafo. We lost him a few years ago. But I had other friends, people like Osito Okonkwo, who is currently the MD of United Nigeria Airlines, and a number of other good friends I made at Merchant Supply.
Can you share with us some of the memorable occasions you had in your days at Merchant of Light? The one that whenever you remember, you turn back and smile.
Okay. One of them would be one of the incidents that happened, at that time, those of us who were aspiring to be engineers, we were in the section of the class we call mass physics. And so we had this teacher who was teaching us additional mathematics. We used to call that Adeba then. Those who are in the East, we call it Adeba. And so this man challenged us and said he was going to give us an assignment that we'll stay in class and do. And anybody that gets this assignment, forgotten exactly what he said he would do for the person. And so he gave us the thing on the board. Those who did further mathematics, all those very long derivations. And so he gave us one of those, whether it was Taylor series, I can't remember, or trigonometrical functions. And he left us. He said, just even if you want to discuss. And we kept working on this. And I think this might be very interesting for very young people. Each time I bring up my own idea of the solution, my colleagues at the time will laugh at me and say, I beg, go and sit down. You are good in ordinary maths, not in further maths. And so I left the group. I started working on the thing based on my own approach. Well, by the time the teacher came back, he said, okay, if you think you have found the solution, come to the board. And so the very, even if you are brilliant, there are people who are better than you. The ones that were better came up, tried. And this our teacher was very interesting because when you fail, you will receive some lashes of cane. And so he was flogging and people were trying. So I was scared that my own flogging might be more. So when I saw that others were not, people were no more electing to come and solve, I said, okay, let me try. And by the time I finished, the man just carried me off. I said, so inside me, I was saying, so even this thing that my colleagues were saying was not right, and even me, I was doubting. And that actually was the solution to the problem. So this was one of those times that I really felt because the only thing that interested me then was success in my academics,
yeah,
and solving problems.
Were you ever tempted to remain in Canada after your PhD program?
Unfortunately not. Yeah, the temptation was there, if that is what you mean, but inside me, I was never tempted. Reason being, from the background I gave you, and other things that I didn't mention. By the way, by the time I entered the university in 1977, it was the same year I lost my father. So I was actually a destitute. Remember, my mother was a very, very poor peasant farmer. And being a teacher, my father had no savings. So when I got admission to UNN, there was really nobody to train me. And all the few people that were supposed to, and I went to ask for help, the only help they could offer was that they can talk to somebody in Lagos so that I can join them for trade, so that I can learn how to trade. In fact, one of them even asked me, these 5 years of engineering, how in 3-4 years you would have finished learning how to trade and become a good businessman. Why are you going to waste your time? Anyway, so when I now joined, by my 200 level, I came back to school at my 200 level and saw my name on the notice board. And I saw that I had won a scholarship. What was this scholarship? It was Federal Merit Award by the Federal Ministry of Education. I believe the Dean of Engineering then submitted my name. So I was kind of curious. Scholarship? Anyway, that was how I transited from being a poor student to a bourgeois student. So for the rest of the 4 years, I was enjoying this Federal Merit Award. And then by the time I finished, I got this graduate assistantship, which meant I didn't pay fees for the masters, and I was also earning salary. And then I had this bond for me to get that salary for 4 years that I must return back to UNN. And I signed it, and I believe that I will honor it. So within me, I said, look, I have a commitment to come back to UNN, to University of Nigeria, because from my 200 level to the PhD, I did not pay school fees. I enjoyed some form of scholarship or the other. And so when I was in Canada, the temptation was there. Because if you are there, even at that time, the temptation was there. In fact, by the time I finished the PhD, my supervisor actually, who was also the head of department in that university, actually gave me an appointment letter and said, well, you've always said you want to return back to Nigeria, but hold this letter. Anytime you change your mind, I'm sure you still have Canadian visa, just come back. You'll be one of us as a faculty. So that was the temptation I had. The job was there, but somehow within me, then the second temptation I had was that I had a brother in the US at the time. He was living in California. And when I visited him after the PhD, he said, if you are going back to Nigeria, you must be a crazy guy. Look, LA is where it is happening. So if you don't like Canada, stay back in LA. And he even tried very interesting ways of trying to get me back there by taking me to a club and making sure that I went home with one fine girl. Somehow, I still sneaked out of that trap and returned back to Canada. And from Canada, I came back to Nigeria. So the temptation was there, actually. I mean, life was good. Everything was good. And so everybody I told I was returning back to Nigeria was saying, is something wrong with your head? And that's the temptation. I was saying, look, I have the option of staying in Canada, enjoying good life, and then returning back to Nigeria and going through the challenges I was going to face. I decided I was going. Somehow within me, I told myself that I was going to try and make it in Nigeria. If it became impossible, then I would have returned back to Canada.
All right. Now we are going to your life after Canada in UNN. You know, in 1999, you became a professor in UNN. And before then, you have lectured and you have been involved in a lot of activities. You became HOD, agricultural engineering, and you wrote so many books. Before I actually met you, I read one of your books, Engineer in Society, written, you co-authored the book with engineer Professor Oluka, I think so. Engineer Professor Oluka, we used that in our second year in the university, but not in UNN, in ESUT. I think I've discussed that with you. So
I hope you bought the book. I hope you didn't pirate the book.
you know, I brought a copy to you one time. You said you don't have your. You told me that I should get my own for you. I still have it here in Abuja.
Okay.
So I want you to share give us some insight into your academic sojourn in the University of Abuja, and also some of your records and achievements in the university.
Okay. The university environment at University of Nigeria, Nsukka, was really very interesting for me. First of all, just a little bit of the background. I just mentioned two of my very powerful mentors, the late engineer Professor Eugene Anazolo, and then who died some years ago, and then engineer Professor Dibo, who died just I would say a few weeks ago. It's not even buried yet. These two gentlemen really, when I met them at UNN, I saw both of them were trained in Israel, and they were really grounded in the field of agricultural mechanization and machines. And if you know Professor Dibo and the other man very well, you know that they were able to design and build quite a large number of machines within the UNN environment. So they were my mentors. And so my mind was going, how do I make my own impact in academics? And the path I chose was, how do I get these machines and all the technologies that they've developed to become useful to people? And of course, that meant that you can imagine that if these two people supervised me, it means that my interest was mostly in the area of machinery, designing and building machines for field production, for processing, and so on. And so most of what I was doing at UNN was about building these machines, bringing them, moving them to higher levels, to the level of commercialization. But the exposure I had in Canada also exposed me to computer applications. And so as I was growing as a young academic, I also had a lot of input from the ICT sector, which also helped me a lot as I was growing up. In fact, while I was in Canada, I had to take special courses in instrumentation, in computer applications. These were completely out of range from my agricultural engineering. But because of the PhD work I did, actually at that time, the idea was, the novelty in them was thinking about the autonomous tractor concept. And so that was what I was trying to deal with at the time. Today, it looks very easy. People talk about autonomous vehicles, but at that time, it was only a concept. And my PhD was trying to, I tried to move this concept from concept to actual thing, that you can have a tractor that can move in the field without any driver. Of course, that means you have to deal with a number of things. Remember that at that time, the wireless systems were not yet there. And so it was really a little difficult. The model that we used had to be wired completely. By the time I came back to UNN, I continued with that research effort. And with these two mentors, at the time, one of them was leading the agri-engineering profession. I think he was either the chairman, either the secretary of Nigerian Institution of Agri-Engineers or the president. And so every conference they go, I will usually go with them, carrying their bags. And so that really exposed me very early in life. So by the time I came back 1991, I was very involved because of their guidance. I was very, very involved in professional activities, starting with the Agricultural Engineering Institution, which at that time was Nigerian Society of Agri-Engineers. Now, those activities took me, or rather exposed me to have contact with somebody I cherish again. He's late now, the late engineer Malam Musa, who at the time was the executive director of National Center for Agricultural Mechanization in Ilori, Kwara State. Now, this man saw a presentation I made in one of those conferences and called me and said, where did you learn all this? You are talking of automation, you are talking of feedback loop control systems in trying to control machines with a computer and so on. he really got interested in the kind of work I was presenting. So he actually engaged me as a consultant at that center. So I would teach maybe 2 weeks at UNN, 2 weeks at Minilori. That again exposed me very early in life to consultancy work. And so through that, I started getting consultancies with Federal Department of Agri, UNDP, FAO, and so on. So while we are teaching in UNN, battling with ASU strike, in fact, I'm one of those who used to enjoy ASU strike because once there is strike, I'm happy because I will leave the campus and continue pursuing my consultancy. But for the benefit of the younger ones, I also told myself, look, my original target is to make it in academics and make it very fast. And so while I was doing all these consultancies, I used the professional society activities as my launch pad to publish papers in conferences, in the journal of that. And once I was able to go through the tutelage of knowing how to write and so on, I now also started writing for external journals and so on. And before I knew it, I came back in 1991, actually, immediately after my PhD. By 1999, I was pronounced a professor at UNN, which, with due humility and everything, it's unheard of in UNN that you can become a professor after 10 years, or rather 9 years of PhD. But it was because of this, what I just explained, doing my teaching, doing my research, being very active in professional body activities so I could publish easily, and then engaging in quite a number of consultancy. And the other thing I did was, in all those consultancies, I would do the consultancy and submit the report, collect my pay, but at the same time, I would convert the data and whatever information I have that to a paper and publish. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
We can hear you, sir.
I can't see my screen anymore. Okay. So
Yeah.
I didn't allow the fact that I was making money from the consultancies to have adverse effects on my publishing, because the only thing that makes you a professor is publishing. Either you publish or you have patents and so on. So I was using all the research I was doing to publish as extensively as I could. And by the time I was assessed by UNN system, which was really very rigorous, as a senior lecturer, I was assessed to become a reader or associate prof. But UNN had one policy that depending on if you have very good publications in terms of scoring, if you score a certain point when they assess you, you can actually have what is called double jump. And so I was never an associate prof or reader. So I jumped from senior lecturer to full professor. And that was because the number of publications and the quality, of course, professors that are here will tell you that it's not just the number of publications, but the quality. And I can see some of them. I can see one of our elders, Professor Lasisi, who at some point examined one of my higher degree work. These were people that really made us, when we look forward to such people and see how they had made it in the profession, we told ourselves, I told myself, yes, I can also make it. So that was how the kind of work we did at UNN. And then we got to a point, maybe that would be our next question. The ASU strike became too much. I had seen everything. I had become a professor. And then I asked myself, so what next?
That's maybe probably that's where I'm going to. Going to 2005 to 2011, when you were appointed the Director General of the Raw Material Research and Development. Before then, you served in NASENI as Director Engineering Infrastructure. What took you to NASENI?
Yes, a number of factors. Number one factor was the wonderful woman I married. I'm not sure she's online, but this is a very prayerful woman. She's still very prayerful up to now. And she used to see no, not dreams, but visions. At the time, I wouldn't say that I was born again like her. So she was always praying. And at some point she said, from her prayer, she's seen that this place was getting too small for me, that I have to move. She see me beyond UNM. And I just couldn't understand it. Look, I've just become a professor, so why wouldn't I stay and enjoy this and do more work and so on? But anyway, I took her vision her prediction or prophecy, I took it very seriously because I know she's a very prayerful woman. So that was one. The second thing was I was really getting completely disgusted with the strikes. So I was asking myself, will this continue? 6 months, 3 months, strike today, tomorrow? So I was telling myself that I need to leave this environment and look for other things to do. The third thing was one of the vice chancellor we had at that time was somebody who had a very far vision. This is the late Professor Mbanefo. One of the things he used to tell us, a few of us who were in his kitchen cabinet, he used to tell us we should look beyond OP for our future. OP is the gateway town. If you live in Soka and you are heading to Enugu or 9 Mile or wherever, you have to pass through this town called OP. So he used to joke when we tried to express our frustration that we are not getting money, this is not happening. He will tell you, look, my friend, you better look beyond OP. This used to be a joke. And so this was the third factor. I kept telling myself, I have to look beyond this town. And that was how I decided to go on sabbatical. And while I was doing that, while I was working on the sabbatical, I started looking, of course, like I said, I was doing a number of consultancies and so on. And then I saw this advert, or rather, one of my younger colleagues, one of my former students, alerted me that there was an advert from NASENI. And in those days, things were not really as bad as they are now in terms of looking for jobs. And so I just responded to the advert I saw in the newspaper. And I was invited to an interview, attended the interview, and then I got a letter. One day, the NASENI has a center at Enugu, SEDI, Scientific Equipment Development Institute. The director of SEDI at that time was Dr. Nadi, engineer Dr. Nadi. Suddenly, FGNK was in our department looking for me, and it was Dr. Nadi's message that I should see him in Enugu. I said, how can I start traveling to Enugu now? Anyway, I went to Enugu and he gave me an appointment letter that based on the interview I attended earlier, that I've been appointed Director of Engineering at NASENI. So that was how I would move to NASENI. In fact, I took part of the sabbatical I had started. I started that sabbatical at Federal University of Technology, Yola. That's Modibo Adama University in Yola. So I had to truncate that, and then I took up the Director of Engineering appointment at NASENI. And it became really very interesting because as I was coming in, a new DG has also started. In fact, he resumed a few months before me, and that's the late Professor OKOH Adiwe, another wonderful mentor. And so when I got to NASENI, it became interesting because after a few months of being in NASENI, I became the de facto deputy DG because anywhere you see Professor Adiwe, I'm by his side. And it was those 2-3 years were really very, very challenging for me. Most of the centers of NASENI you see today were conceived at that time. So we were working around the clock to get NASENI to be where it should be following the original concept given by engineer Gordon AZIKIWE. So while that was happening, one of my former students, who is now a professor at University of Agric, Umudike, he called me and said, "Did you see this advert for DG in raw materials?" I said, at that time, of course, Raw Material Council was the biggest parastatal in Ministry of Science and Technology. So I told him, please, I know that place. I don't have the political muscle. And before then, another interesting thing was that while I was serving as Director of Engineering, the Ministry of Science and Technology, led by the Permanent Secretary, called me one day and said there was a problem in Proda Enugu. And I think there were just two things that happened. Two DGs died, within a short space of time. And I think there was some kind of crisis among staff and so on. So the PAMSEC said the minister had directed that he should look for somebody who is a known peacemaker. That it appears that all the Igbo groups, the different Igbo groups in Proda were fighting among themselves, Anambra versus Enugu, Enugu versus Imo, and that the little he knows about me, that I'm a very peaceful person, that he wants to appoint me DG of Proda. So I should leave Naseni and go there and make peace. And so I said, "Okay, you already told me that this is Anambra versus Imo, Imo versus..." I'm from Anambra State. So the moment you appoint me, this crisis will continue. Why don't you look for somebody from the West or somebody from the North so that we can learn our lessons? If somebody from outside the region comes, maybe they can stop fighting. Anyway, eventually the minister called me and said, "Look, we are offering you to become a DG without interview, and you are saying you don't want to go." I saw a guy. I decided to leave that zone to come to Abuja. So sending me back there now. So I thanked them and pleaded that they excuse me from that. Anyway, as that happens, then this advert thing came. And I went to my DJ and asked him, "This advert of raw material, what do you think?" He said, "Look, my friend, I'm going to hand over this agency to you. Why are you worrying yourself about that? The politics in that organization will be too much for you." So I didn't apply until the day before the closing date. That's why one of the things I take from this is that anything God wills for you will happen. This same former student of mine called me and said, "Prof, have you applied for that raw material thing?" I said, "I beg, I don't have the strength." Of course, you have to do like 30 copies or so of your CV and so on and so forth. So he backed off. When I got home that day, I didn't know he called my wife. And my wife called me and said, "What is the problem with you? Why are you not applying for this raw material thing?" I said, "But I didn't tell you." He said, "No, that so person called him and said I've refused to apply." Well, being a very obedient husband, I said, "Okay, I will apply." And so that was how I submitted my application about 30 minutes before 4 o'clock, the closing date. Anyway, the rest is history. Eventually, after the interviews and so on, I was appointed the Director General of Raw Materials, which I started 2005, served out that regime. That was Obasanjo's administration. I got reappointed under Yaradua, and then I served out the second tenure under Goodluck Jonathan. So that was my sojourn in Raw Material Council.
Okay, can you, in a nutshell, share some of your major achievements in raw materials as the DG?
Yes, when I got to Raw Material Council, I saw the council had really done a lot in the area of developing technologies, developing and commercializing technologies for value addition to our raw materials. And when you look at raw materials, you know there are two components. the agricultural raw materials and mineral raw materials. I saw that the council had what you call, or what was called, pioneer industries. And a number of these industries were established just to showcase that this is possible. And there are quite a number of them scattered all over the country, including a place for making fertilizer, a place for making castor oil, machines for making different vegetable oil, and so on. So one of the things I did was, we had quite a number of these industries. Maybe some of them were at pilot plant scale. Some of them were actually commercial plants. In fact, we even had one for processing kaolin. You know, you can have two grades of kaolin. You can have industrial grade kaolin, which can be used for making things like paints and so on. But you can also have pharmaceutical grade kaolin, which can get kaolin refined to a level where you can use it as base for pharmaceutical production. If you are going to be doing tablets and so on. So the commercial kaolin, the industrial kaolin is the one you use for making industrial products, but the pharmaceutical grade one is for making drugs and so on. So I saw that as a very key industry, and there were quite a number of such industries, which time will not permit us to go. So one of the things I did was, at the time I came in, these industries were all over, including one for processing barytes somewhere in Cross River State. So I told myself, we should not be running these industries. We should get these industries to the private sector. And so one of the first things I did was to do a complete evaluation of these industries. And then we had a PPP arrangement where we now ceded these industries to private sector. And so a number of engineers, a number of SMEs bought over these industries and started, of course, you will agree with me, or you can imagine that they were able to run these industries more efficiently than those of us who were in government. So that's one area. The other area that I focused was, for you to get commercial plants for producing raw materials, you need to intensify R&D. And so one of the things I did was to say, okay, where is this R&D? Most of the R&D are done by universities, polytechnics, research institutes. So I changed the budget to have a large sum of money every year on R&D. And these monies were done through, these research were done through what you may call contract research, where we called for proposals from universities, and then we supported them with grants. At that time, TED Fund was not in existence. What was there then was the organization that gave birth to TED Fund. I think
ETF.
it was ETF. Yeah, and
ETF.
in fact, I was in the committee that set up the R&D arm of ETF. So it was basically mostly only Raw Material Council that was giving grants, apart from probably Agri Research Council. So every year we give quite a number of grants to universities to do research. I also found that you can give this money, and if the environment for that research is not there, the money will just stop. One of the things we try to do, which was to build what we call the regional laboratories for materials testing. And some of these were accomplished so that those researchers can find laboratories where they can do materials testing. And some of these material testing laboratories are embedded inside some universities. And so it's a long list of research, but I know that we were able to fund a number of research projects in different universities for processing raw materials. I've mentioned a number of them: barytes, kaolin, named them, quite a number of them, and we made sure that these researches went around the country where we had all these minerals and agricultural products. One of the things that came out was almost on a weekly basis, I would receive requests from the villa, from the presidency, or from ministers, or from governors, investors who are looking for materials, looking for raw materials, looking for minerals, looking for that. And in most cases, the council would engage consultants to look for these minerals where they are and then do testing. At least the investors would like to know the components, the constituents, the quality, and so on. If you say you have this mineral, you find that the mineral will always occur in association with other minerals. So by the time you get it, maybe it's only about 5 or 10%. So we commissioned a number of studies. That study came up with two things. One is I challenged the researchers that did this. I want a situation where you have a digital map of Nigeria, and once you click on any point within the map of Nigeria, it will give you information on the raw materials available in that particular environment. And then you can even query further to know if you say you have tantalite in this environment, what grade of tantalite? Is it 5%? What are the other associated minerals? And then if you now need more information, you can now approach the council. So we created this database, and that led to what we call the raw material information system, which we commissioned while I was DG. And also, apart from the digital one, the physical one, which is housed in my Tama now, that has actually been upgraded by my predecessor, or rather the person that took over from me. So if you go there, yeah, my successor, yes. If you go to my Tama headquarters of the council, you will see the raw material display center where you see every raw material that is in Nigeria. But the more important one is the digital side, where you can actually get information on all this. And then if you were interested in testing or finding out the quality of the raw material, then you can visit any of the labs, associated labs that we have developed. The final thing I can remember about the kind of work we did was, I also saw the disconnect between research and industry, academia and industry. So you could fund all these research and they come up with research results, but these research results to remain in the laboratories. And having moved almost full cycle, remember I started from Osaka, went to Niseni, which is more like an industrial outfit. From Naseni, now at that time I was in raw materials. So I have seen that disconnect between research and industry. So one of the approach I adopted that time was to interface more with manufacturers. And so I intensified collaboration with the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Not only MAN is big. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria is the big one, but we also collaborated with NASI, Nigerian Association of Small-Scale Industrialists, and then NASME, Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. The idea was that if we embed ourselves in these organizations, we will be able to have first-hand information from these organizations, from where we can now get information on the research needs of these organizations. And then we can now give these as research to the R&D people. And so I made it a law, or if you like, I gave a directive that all the 10 sectors of Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, anytime they are having their monthly or bi-monthly meeting, a staff of the council must be present at that meeting. And they will give us like 30 minutes to address them. And then those industrialists will also come up with challenges, the research challenges that they have. And so that created a very good environment from where we can now bring industries and researchers together. And a number of products came out of this. I know that if I give one good example that I like so much, the issue of our medicinal plants. there is this crop called moringa. We promoted it through this platform. This platform of bringing researchers and industrialists together. A number of professors were giving grants based on what those who were trying to process and package moringa, what they said was their problem. At the end of the day, the research was done by a number of universities, and then we had about 5 SMEs that were empowered with production machines, and they were producing different products, oil, the beverages, medicinal ointments, and so on from this crop called moringa. Those who don't know about moringa, you can study about it. And we adopted this model for a number of products. For example, another good example is making chocolate from cocoa and other products. Beyond the big factories manufacturing cocoa, which were having problems then, we had about 5 SMEs in the Lagos environment who were interested in processing chocolate and things like that from cocoa. But their problem was the research component. They didn't have production machines. Even some of their processes were not good. And so we took them through working with researchers. We took them through technologies that were developed locally, and we gave them all the equipment, and they started producing at their level anyway, not to compare with organizations like Cadbury, who would normally import big machines. But these SMEs were really very interesting because they were producing and supplying schools and so on. And my happiness is that a number of them are still in touch with me today, and their industries have grown to very big industries. And there are a number of such interventions in different parts of the country within the period I was there. It's a long story, but I think this is just a glimpse of what we did. Yeah.
Okay, since you are talking about agriculture now, before we go to your personal life, let me ask you this question. In 1983, legendary Nigerian musician by name Sonny Okosun released a song called Which Way Nigeria and Which Way to Go. Agriculture was the driving force of the Nigerian economy immediately after independence. And then came oil. And many people are now saying that agriculture is the way to go. Others are saying that no, we have passed the era of agriculture. Agriculture is gone and gone for good. What is your thought about this? Which way Nigeria and which way to go?
Well, it depends on how anybody looks at it. People may think that now that we are moving towards a service-oriented industries, that agriculture, or in fact, even a solid minerals, not the way to go. But I completely agree that agriculture is the way to go. We have to go back to agriculture. However, agriculture, how? You know, when we look at, we say ICT is taking over, automation is taking over, service-oriented industries are taking over. What are they servicing? I give you one example. Now we have innovation hubs, we have young Nigerians coming up with different apps, such that if I come back to food now, the innovation now is that you can sit in your office and with your mobile phone, you can order food and the food is delivered. This is the service side of things. But the food still has to be produced. Before innovation, before technology, those who are now doing the distribution, those who are improving the supply chain and distribution chain, those who are applying technology to improve on this. Before they get to that point, somebody will still have to be producing the food. So my own is that agriculture is the way to go. However, it cannot be the same way we have been doing agriculture. Remember where we started this story. What made me study agricultural engineering? Farming with hoe, with machetes, preserving our food. Yeah, I remember my mother used to put her corn on the fireplace to preserve the one that we'll use next year. Those are primitive ways of agriculture. The way to go is modern agriculture. Today, we have agriculture driven by AI. We have drones applied to agriculture. We have modern ways of doing agriculture with technology. So the argument we have is sometimes people say, if you say people should go back to agriculture, who really wants to go back there? Yes, nobody wants to. I don't want to go. My children, I will not also pray for my children to go back to agriculture in the way it is practiced. But if you have agriculture where, as an engineer, for example, you are going to be providing technology services, you are going to providing data services, and so on to small-scale farmers to make their life easier so that they can perform their work as farmers better than they were doing. In fact, one of the projects that I'm supervising now, one of my research groups is working on, is promoting artificial intelligence in agriculture. This project is funded by TED Fund and a number of other agencies. The idea is, how can you modernize agriculture in such a way that a farmer, just using your mobile phone, you can obtain all the information, all the data and the necessary information, input information you require, which can improve your productivity. And then you can have access to equipment and machines. Who will provide these equipment and machines? Engineers. It does not mean that the farmer must own and operate these machines. But if we get our acts together, we should have mechanized agriculture in such a way that people use machines to produce, people use technology and machines to preserve, people use machines and technology to even transport. I don't know if you've noted how we transport our agricultural commodities. The way cows are carried from the north to south, the way tomatoes are carried and so on. It is because we don't have technology. So the way to go, to come back to your question, is, yes, we need to go back to agriculture, but it has to be technology-driven agriculture.
Okay, now let's come back to one area of your life, and that is your participation in the engineering professional bodies. Let's begin with the Nigerian Society of Engineers. You are a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. How did you join? How and when did you join the Nigerian Society of Engineers?
Yes, when I came back to UNN, when I finished the PhD and came back, I was very desirous of being active in professional activities. At that time, the nearest branch of Nigerian Society of Engineers was at Enugu. And we were at Nsukka. Well, Nsukka is about 1 hour, 1.5 or 2 hours drive from Enugu. And so within the university community, we started thinking about how to start a branch. And I was working with a number of young engineers then, some people like Engineer Professor C. Umuoji. At some point, I became the secretary of NSE Nsukka branch. And so we formed the branch. I still remember in those young days when we think about big engineers. And so we're dreaming on a day that the president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers will come to inaugurate us at Nsukka. I still remember that visit by the then president, Ujaman. I can't forget that trip. It was one of the exposures we had that changed my life. When I saw the big engineers that we were hearing about, of course, there were other engineers that we were all looking forward to at that time. People like Engineer Iwayam, who is an alumnus of UNN, and a number of other very senior engineers. We would invite a number of them to UNN. There's one gentleman at Shell then, if I remember his name. So we were inviting them to come and talk to us. And so we started having our branch activities. But it wasn't easy, I must confess. Even to host the meetings, whenever there is NSE conference, we'll all aspire to go, but university will not sponsor you. And so we'll borrow money and travel. I remember the first NSE conference I attended with my wife. I didn't know I was exposing myself to trouble, because after that first conference I attended with my wife, she so much enjoyed the spouse program that every year herself and the other colleagues, these women will conspire and say they must travel with us to these NSE conferences. And we were not sponsored. So I was doing NSE activities, doing Nigerian Society of Engineers activities, International Soil Tillage Research Organization, and a number of other professional bodies which we were battling. And eventually we were able to get the NSE in Nsukka branch to get it on its footing. And then we started attending conferences. While I talk about NSE, I also talk about the Nigerian Institution of Agric Engineers, because that was where I started. At some point, we were driving to every part of this country to attend workshops and conferences under that. In fact, I remember a case. We drove all the way from Nsukka to Maiduguri. We drove ourselves, myself and engineer Professor Frank Idike, who was the national president at the time. We were traveling by road. And we were enjoying the professional body activities, which I believe really helped me a lot. Remember, I was talking about paper writing and so on. So I would do it in this NSE, do in NIAE, do in other professional bodies. And that really helped me a lot in coming up with the kind of papers that was required for promotion. So those activities helped us a lot. We look forward to NSE activities. And then you talk about the book, Engineer in Society. I noticed at that time that for current registration, it was one of the things that people must write the exam on. And so I was one of those who didn't believe in handouts. I told myself, the university where I studied in Canada, every professor there must have written like 2 or 3 books. At the time I came back, my professors were not really, especially in engineering, you hardly saw anybody who had a book. In fact, when I approached one of my senior colleagues for us to write a book together, said, don't worry about all those, how can you write a book in engineering? So that book, Engineer in Society, was my first attempt. And I gathered these other people and we got together. And it was just our lecture notes that we revised. And I was also targeting that people can use this to prepare for professional exams. And that book became, in fact, I remember that when I was being assessed, I didn't know that it was even going to be accepted as a book. But there was evidence that it was being used by by students. And so it was counted as a book for higher education and all the other books that I wrote. So these activities really helped us a lot. And that Engineering Society is one of the courses that brings you, so you have a good foundation. Incidentally, this year, as I'm speaking to you, this year I started teaching the same course for 100 level students here at African University of Science and Technology. Even as the Vice Chancellor, I teach. And so the only difference is that in those days when I was teaching this, I would be looking at my notes and reading. Now, I teach them from my head, having gone through all the things that one has gone through in engineering. So it's really very interesting that these things happen. Professional society activities really helped a lot. So I started from there. Then, of course, when I moved to Abuja, I think it was when I was in Abuja that I became a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. And I try as much as possible, even though one is getting old now, but As my chairman, I'm sure you can confirm that I still participate in Nigerian Society of Engineers Abuja branch. But having become a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, we continued doing our best to provide an environment for the young ones to come up. And then I also started seeing other higher bodies, such as the Academy of Engineering, Academy of Science, Academy of this, Academy of that. And like I said, I can see Professor Lasisi online. I was telling myself, people like Professor Lasisi, these are people who we are looking onto as big agric engineers in the profession. And at the time, he was a very active member of Academy of Engineering. And so I started aspiring to become a fellow. It wasn't easy, though. I think I got the Fellow Academy of Engineering the second attempt. And Academy of Science, I got at the third attempt. I'm telling you this so that you know that it's not easy. Sometimes people think, people say, these things, you just get them. Like somebody even insinuated that it was at the time of DG that I got most of these. No, I got Academy of Science. I got elected Fellow of Academy of Science at the third attempt, and that of Engineering at the second attempt. Because they have to screen you, they have to vote, they have to elect you, and so on. As God will have it, I started as the president of Nigerian Academy of Engineering in 2022. My tenure will be over by next year, and it's been a wonderful experience being the president of an academy that has an average age of 70 years. These are the top engineers, male and female, in the country, giving policy direction to the engineering profession in the country. And so
Okay.
it's been a wonderful experience passing through all the different levels of engineering profession to where we are today.
All right. Let me take you to the African University of Science and Technology, where you currently sit as the acting vice president, which is equivalent of a vice chancellor. So can you share some insights? You know, most people don't really know much about the school. Initially, it was started as a university for postgraduate studies only, and recently we have started undergraduate studies in engineering and other allied disciplines. Can you share some insight about the school and the vision, the mission, and where do you see the school in the next 4, 5, or 10 years?
Yes, when I left Raw Material Counseling in 2013, I was considering a number of options. Of course, the number one option was to quietly leave Nigeria and rest outside the country. But on a second thought, I said, no, let me do the rest. Let me rest within the country and then decide on what next to do. And so I left Raw Material Council and took up a position at the National Universities Commission as a visiting professor. That 2 years I was in National Universities Commission was also very interesting because I was working directly with the then Executive Secretary, Professor OKOH, who actually invited me to work with him. And we were looking at research and innovation in Nigerian universities. And at the same time, when he couldn't go to convocations, I was one of those he would send. And then I was also leading accreditation panels and so on. So one day he called me and said, there is this university in Galadimawa in Abuja. I want you to go there, lead a team so that we assess them. They are looking for their permanent license. I want a team that will assess them. That was actually how I got to know about African University of Science and Technology. And so I led a team that came to the university to assess what they have been doing and whether they should be granted a license, because they were operating with a temporary license. And so after temporary license, you now qualify to get your permanent license. And so that's how I led that panel. And came, and I in fact, I told them that this is one of the best kept secrets in Abuja. Because at that time, they were doing only postgraduate studies, only PhD and masters at very high level. In fact, one of the things I noted was that for you to earn a PhD in the university, you must publish at least 2 papers in any Scopus Index journal. Even UNN didn't have that condition. Not just publishing 2 papers, but in Scopus Index journals. And so I saw very high level, and then for you to get admitted to the masters and PhDs, you must have 2-1. The regulator NUC says 2-2, but you must have 2-1 to be admitted to this university. And I saw that it was an international environment where you have students from all parts of Africa, and then with a number of funding from donor agencies. So the model was very interesting, and they were and they are still operating the modular approach, where you take a course, drill students down to the highest level on that course. When they finish, they start another one. So when we finished, we saw some issues which we pointed out to them and said, you need to modify some of the ways you're operating. I also saw that in their master plan, their original strategic plan, that after 10 years, they will start admitting undergraduate students. But they wanted to operate 10 years as postgraduates. Anyway, I finished the work, submitted my report, and they got their license. And I continued what I was doing at NUC. And at the time my tenure at NUC ended, I was now considering the next step: return back to Nsukka, set up practice, return to Canada. Remember, I still have my appointment letter. I still had the appointment letter I had like 30, 40 years ago. And so one day I got a call from the then president that if I could visit them. So I visited them, and they said, so what's your plan? I said, well, for now, I want to hang around Abuja for a while. They said, why don't you come? Some of the things you raised, that they were still trying to implement them. One of them being the fact that they didn't have Directorate of Academic Planning. And so that was how I came in and became the first Director Academic Planning for the university. And so we started looking at the strategic plan, the new programs, and so on and so forth. And it was really very, very interesting experience. Having the other model that is interesting about this university is that 80% of the faculty, the lecturers, actually come from outside the country. So you have Africans in diaspora all over the world. They engage them and they come here to teach. Of course, the other part of it that attracted me was that they were going to be paying me in dollars, not in Naira. And I wish that is still happening now, that dollar has become, but at some point, the regulators said they couldn't pay some of us who are in Nigeria in dollar. But anyway, I saw an environment where people are paid well for the work they do. So these professors that come from outside, they do real work. And then the students get to visit their labs all over the world. And so when I was invited, I accepted, and I started working with them as Director of Academic Planning. And at the same time, I was heading the Department of Materials, and I continued. Unfortunately, sometime in 2021, we lost the president of the university, who is a very distinguished professor of mathematics, who took ill suddenly and died. You know, we're just coming out from COVID, and so many things were happening. So we had that disaster, which is still very painful for some, because this is a very distinguished professor of mathematics that was actually brought back to Nigeria from Italy, from UNESCO. And he was doing a wonderful job, and then we lost him anyway. Eventually, the board of the university appointed me acting president, said I should continue until they take a decision. That was October 2021. And so I sat down and said, well, I don't know. I asked them, how brief or how long is this, so that I know if it's going to be a brief thing, I will just relax. And so by the time you appoint a new person, I don't want to start things. And they said, yes, it's likely to be a brief thing, but this is 2023. But anyway, what did I do? I said, there are a number of things I saw when I came, and I needed to correct them and then get the university to become better than where I found it. And so we started the process of expansion. At the time I took over, we had just about 6 or 7 programs, mostly all of them at the master's and PhD level. With the board approval and approval of the National Universities Commission, now we have quite a number of interesting programs. We added, the first work we did was to add the programs in space sciences. So today, we have PhD, MSc in aerospace engineering, systems engineering, GIS and geoinformatics, and space physics. This we are doing in collaboration with the National Space Agency. And then we expanded the program to now include undergraduate programs. Today, we went through all the approval processes, and today we have BSc programs in civil engineering, mechanical engineering, petroleum and energy resources engineering, materials and metallurgical. And then in the computer side, we now have software engineering and computer science. Another interesting thing is we also found that engineering cannot really work effectively. Driving engineering to innovation without the business and the innovation aspect of things. And so we also introduced a School of Management and Business. That School of Management and Business currently runs 4 programs, 1 in accounting, 1 in business admin, and then masters in public policy and public admin. The public policy program is targeted at professionals in every field who are interested in learning how policies can be drafted and how policies can be made to work. So it's a very big think tank that we have just started. I think we are going to graduate the first cohort this probably next month. But it's interesting, that class is interesting. You have medical doctors, you have engineers, you have social scientists, more like what you have in Kuru, looking at public policy and things like that. So that's one of the things we've been able to do. And then if you look at my trajectory, the movement from the university to all those institutions and back to the university, I found that one major missing gap in academics is translating research ideas into products, goods, and services. And so one of the things we've been able to do in the last 2 years is establish a tech innovation hub. We call it AUST Inspire. In that hub, this is where we are now making sure that students get the kind of skills they require. And I've told them, all the undergraduates, before you leave here, you must leave here with a skill. And for the postgraduates, they're encouraged not to just have skills, they can even have their own, we encourage them to have their own startups. In fact, yesterday we interviewed 3 of them. They presented their pitch, and when they left, we agreed that we are going to add them. We're already incubating 7 startups, which are led by our postgraduate students. So these 3 we interviewed yesterday, they are going to join that cohort, so that at the end of the day, we have about 10 startup companies where we are incubating, each of them leading to products, leading to goods and services. We have some little support from African Development Bank and World Bank for doing this. And we believe that this is the way universities should go, so that you can actually have an incubation center, a tech incubation center within your environment. Students are doing their research work, publishing papers, but part of that can also be used to develop startups. And these startups will encourage them. You don't do a one-man show or one-man business. You must be able to have a team. In these days of tech, if you're an engineer, you should have a computer person with you. You should have a business person with you. So they form consortium and they begin to learn how to form companies. And the support we now give them is to train them, help them with registrations, and then with a little support for them to actually actualize their. So that hub is currently running. It's also running a number of CPD courses, continuing professional development courses. So these are some of the things we're able to do. And we hope that in the long run, we will be able to transform this university to an entrepreneurial university. That's my mission, where it is not only teaching and learning, but also community service and also developing technologies which will lead to goods and services and collaborating more with the industrial sector. Thank you.
On a final note, do you belong to any political party?
That's a very interesting one. No, I don't belong to any political party, but that doesn't mean that I'm not a politician. I'm a politician that...
Do you have any plan to go into politics when you leave?
No. No.
Okay.
Now, the temptation was there when I left Raw Material Council. That was when I was almost joining a political party, but I decided not to join any political party.
All right. Have you written any book about your life?
There is a book that somebody wrote when I was leaving Raw Material Council. Those who attended the valedictory event I hosted, one journalist wrote a book. I think the title was How Would Posterity Judge You? And that was a compendium of all the things I did in Raw Material Council. But
do you have a plan to write
yes.
an autobiography of them?
I'm actually on it now. I'm actually writing an autobiography.
Can you share with us, or is it a secret what the title will be?
Maybe that's part of the trade secret. Maybe when it comes out, if I reveal it now.
We have had engineers who have come on inside the arena. We've had one engineer, Amana, wrote a book about his life, Sojourn of Providence. And we've also had engineer Madoka, who also wrote his own. We've had those who have also proposed. We have an engineer without borders. We also have so many people who have come. And recently we had engineer Olorofemi, whose story of life revolves around the love of God. And he simply said that the book of his life will be God's love, or love of God. So that's why we wanted to know where your own will be tilting to, looking at the interesting parts of your life. Anyway, we leave it as a secret. I believe one day the secret will be unveiled. What's your final note for young Nigerian engineers? Looking at your time as a young engineer, what motivated you, what inspired you? Today, you are in the university environment again, trying to incubate young graduates who are trying to cut their own niche in the engineering profession. You must have seen the differences between your own time and their own time. What is your final take? What is your advice for them?
Well, my advice for young engineers is that, look, there is no time that everything will be 100% correct. At the time I started as a young engineer, things were really difficult. There was no mobile phone. The jobs were not there. not to the extent of what we have today, but it was even more difficult because you can only see, at that time, you can only see job openings in newspapers. There was no social media or telephone to contact people. It's only what you see in newspapers. So it has always been difficult. But what I want to tell the young ones is that even in difficult environments, even in the, if you look at the principles of chaos, you see that there is still some order, even when there is confusion. I think a good example would be, you know, these whirling winds that you see sometimes that raises dust. And if you watch, it looks confusing, but if you watch it very closely, you see you can model it and you can actually follow the pattern. So even in the confusion that we are in Nigeria, I want to tell young engineers that the future is still bright. And a lot depends on what you can make out of it. Gone are the days when in our own days, when you come out, you may have 2 or 3 or 4 jobs and you choose one. Gone are the days when people will go to school and come out and just be waiting to be employed. We should, as you are growing, even when you are employed, be restless. Don't settle for whatever you have. Always ask what is the next. Even me at my age and everything, I'm still asking myself, what next can I do? So don't be comfortable in that your comfort zone because anything can happen. If you have money, for example, in the bank, maybe you have it in Naira and overnight, Naira becomes devalued. You see that all that your money is nonsense. As long as God gives you life, please look at 2 things. One, ask yourself, where am I heading to? What do I want to be tomorrow? And then very importantly, mentorship is very important. Mentorship does not necessarily mean you must have physical contact with people. I've mentioned a number of people. Some of these people, by their lives, mentored me without knowing that they were mentoring me. Because I was saying, I think you mentioned one of them, Engineer Vincent Maduka. Without his knowing me, he didn't know he was my mentor because I was always looking at this man and the way he carried on in his life and a number of other engineers. So look at the engineers we have in the country, learn from the ones you will learn, the ones you can see physically, approach them so that they can mentor you. And then make sure you are not one of those who you have all the ideas, but you don't take that first step. All the ideas are coming to your head. I think the biggest problem, the biggest challenge we have as young engineers, taking that first initial step. The inertia is always there. I don't have money. I don't know anybody. You can give 1 million excuses why you are not able to pursue your dream. But I want to tell young engineers that those ideas that are coming to your head, remember the example I gave of my additional maths or further maths teacher. If I had been afraid of taking that bold step because I was doubting, will it work or will it not work, I wouldn't have passed that mathematics. So all those ideas you have, articulate them. Knowledge is also very important. And I want to thank NSE Abuja branch, all the things you are doing. Sometimes people think it's waste of time. Train yourself. I give you a good example about myself. When AI started coming up, artificial intelligence, I tried to dabble into it. I saw that even as a professor, I would just be talking without knowing what I'm talking about. I had to take a Coursera course on AI during COVID, because during COVID, we are not going anywhere. So I was keeping myself busy. I took a free course on AI. That gave me, of course, I was going from one stage to the other. When they got to stage where my old brain could not carry anymore, I stopped. But I had now learned something about AI. Now, I'm leading a number of projects. AI application, even in health, AI application in agriculture, AI application in, because I'm telling myself, this is the direction, technology. That's where we are going in engineering. By the way, one of the things I noticed in the undergraduate program we just mounted, half of the class are in software engineering or computer science. In our core engineering programs, we have 3, 4, 5, very few numbers. Now, that tells me that we need to begin to even change our curriculum to the point where it will be heavily laden with ICT so that it will become more interesting for industry and for young engineers. So updating your knowledge with things that can be useful to you is very, very important for young engineers. Acquire knowledge, especially knowledge that can help you beat the competition. Your competition are your colleagues, your workplace. What is the thing that will stand you out? I recently employed a young man in this university. This young man didn't read computer science. He didn't read software engineering. But at the time I took a decision to employ him, nobody knew. I was looking for somebody who could design a flyer, something as simple as designing a flyer. And we were to outsource it, but I needed it like now. I said, how come all these young people coppers all around? Nobody can design flyer. Eventually, my secretary got one of the young coppers. And within minutes, he was able to do a flyer, and I made corrections, and we started sharing our flyers. So this young man now started designing flyers for us. And then one day I checked, I said, what did you study? He didn't study anything computing, but I think he's an architect. But he developed interest in this area. And by the time that batch was finishing, of course, their heads of departments were writing, please return my copper, please don't return my copper. I already had number one as those I will return as copper, as for staff. So you will find that when you learn new skills, as technological skills are coming up, if you learn them, it will give you an edge over. You can't progress if you are, oh, I'm a mechanical engineer, therefore I cannot be involved in public speaking. No, these are soft skills. By the way, that's part of what we are doing in the Innovation Hub, giving the young students soft skills, learning how to speak, learning how to communicate, learning how to interact, how to relate with people, and of course, learning how to do business. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Wow. Thank you so much, Engineer AZIKIWE Peter ONWUALU, our guest for today's edition of Inside the Arena. It's been a very wonderful time. I wish we could continue and continue and continue. It's been a very interesting time with you. Quickly, we are going to open the corner kick segment for our participants to ask questions. So we have our rules. If you have any question, you click on the reaction button, click on raise hand, and we unmute you to ask your question. Tony Ajala, quickly.
Good afternoon for this special arena. I'm from UK. I've been UK. I've been an engineer for over 40 years, and I've worked in many areas of UK. I really thank the professor for what he said. From my own knowledge as an engineer, when I was working in Airways agency in UK, I have an engineer who a white lady, civil engineer, and she taught us one thing about, especially for the young engineers, about what they call wider employability among the engineers. Many engineers do BSc, their first degree in civil engineering, and then they go on to do masters in civil engineering, and then doctorate. But what she said is that you have to widen your employability. You should do something a little bit more different. Like me, I took that advice. I decided to go and do masters in transport planning and management. So now it actually helped me out in my employability all over the place. And I've worked in many areas in civil service and central government. I've always advised young engineers, widen your employability. your scope, according to what the professor said. Try to uplift yourself in many areas. That's what I need to say.
Hello?
Hello?
Okay, you are done. You are done, sir.
Yes, I've done. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. Any other question? Okay, Engineer Bennett Okoli.
Yes, I want to thank Professor ONWUALU for the opportunity to speak to us today. My question to Professor is, I would like to ask his biggest regret in life, if he has any. Thank you.
Okay, any other so that we can take the three for him to respond before we come to other people. C. Frank.
Sorry, can Engineer Okoli repeat his question?
Engineer Okoli, please, can you repeat? Is that Engineer Bennett Okoli?
Yes, okay. Yes, my question to the professor is, I would like to know if he has any regrets in life. Yes, in that he has worked in so many places, was one time a lecturer and now still a lecturer. He has worked in industry. If he has any regrets in life from all these endeavors in life. Thank you.
All right. Now we take Engineer Frank Onwudinjo.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor ONWUALU, for that presentation. It is really motivating, especially for those of us who are young engineers. So, but I want to ask a simple question, which is, given the current situation of Nigeria, what area do you think that a Nigerian engineer, a young engineer, can carve out a niche for himself? Thank you.
Okay, finally, for those that raised hand, Engineer Ademola Olorufemi. We can't hear you, sir. Your audio, sir. We can't hear you. Okay, why you adjust your audio, I think we will allow Engineer Alonge.
So, thank you so much, Engineer Benosi, for the great work you are doing in this arena in the last couple of months. And also thank one of my mentors, Professor ONWUALU, for having you at this program. I just want to ask what advice you have for quite a number of our young men who are now going on this JAPA syndrome all over the place. We are losing a lot of them to Western worlds. Well, it's a serious concern to some of us. What advice do you have for them so that maybe can they find a way of staying back? What do they do in the midst of the quagmire we have found ourselves as a nation? That is just my question.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Engineer Olorufemi, sir, is your audio back? We can't hear you. I think you have to look at the device you are using, click on the audio part. Maybe you didn't log in well with your audio so that you can get it. Let me invite Professor ONWUALU to respond to the questions while we take the next batch of the questions and wrap it up for today.
Yes, thank you, everybody. I think Engineer Olorufemi can also send text. You can write on the you can write, yes. So you can read this question. Yeah. So the first question, or the first one, was a comment, which is more like reinforcing what I said. It's very important what Jala, I think it's Engineer Jala from UK, said. That is the way to go. In any profession you find yourself, that's what I said already. I agree with him completely. We have engineers who started as engineers, and they go into tech, they go into fintech and other areas, and they make it. Even medical doctors nowadays, you see some of them leave the medical profession and move into other fields. So, and the only way to do this is knowledge. You need to look for knowledge. You need to look for, you need to gain skill in whatever you are doing. Like I tell most young people who are around me, the university has a purpose. The university is to develop your mind. When you now get out of the university, it's a different ballgame. Some people may be lucky, they get job and they start moving in their career. But for the rest of young people, you have to struggle. And the way to struggle would be to see how you can have other skills that can stand you out. Whether you want to run your own business or you want to work in government or even in an industry, those things will become very handy. The next one, I think, is from Engineer Code. The question is whether I have any regret in life. I don't know whether the life he's talking about is in my professional life or personal life. I want to believe that he wants to know if I have any regret in my professional life. That is moving, all the movements I've made from academia to industrial, back to research, and then back to academics. And my answer to that is that there is no regret whatsoever. In fact, when Ben was asking me about the title of my proposed biography, autobiography, I didn't want to say it, but one of the titles I'm looking at is something that sounds like a rolling stone. Now, instead of the way we say it, a rolling stone that gathers no moss, this one is a rolling stone that gathers moss. But like I said, I haven't concluded on that. So I must tell you, I have no regrets whatsoever. The only regret I have is looking at what is happening in the country. Some of the things I really wanted to do or wanted to achieve, I couldn't achieve them. And so if there is any regret at all, that's where the regret is. For example, if you remember what I said, what drove me into agricultural engineering was the need to stop or reduce drudgery in farm work. And all the work I did at UNN, looking at the machines we had developed quite a number of machines. I saw the system, the Nigerian system, I saw a lot of constraints why those machines could not leave the laboratories to get to the industry or to get to farmers who need them. When I got to Naseni, I told myself, now I have arrived. Now being in Naseni, I will have the opportunity of commercializing some of these machines. We tried, actually. I give you one interesting example. I remember my DJ at the time said, look, you're an agric engineer. We must stop this problem of processing cassava manually. I saw guys do it, and the man he said, put up any team you like. I want a situation where you put in cassava at one end, and at the other end, you have gari, you have starch, you have glucose syrup, you have... That was when we started this big project in Naseni. And I assembled a number of professors, research people from different universities, I was picking them from exhibitions. If you say you know how to do, you showcase something on how to do glucose syrup, I'll pick you. You know how to do dry, I pick you. And we assembled them and they were meeting in Naseni every fortnight, every month. We finished and had a complete process line. We had to bring even somebody on instrumentation. So we would have a complete process line automated, fully designed and made in this country. So one of the regrets I have is that by now, such an initiative would have led to a factory which can be replicated 1,000 times. It didn't happen. When I got to raw material, I also saw the same thing. Some of the things I tried to do in raw material, one good example is when we intervened in the area of processing cashew. We succeeded in that one because we were able to do about 3 cashew plants with private people, and those cashew plants are still running, processing cashew. But the regret I have is that when I look around, I still see people farming with hoe. I still see people peeling cassava with bare hands. I still see miners digging with their bare hands. We need to get to a level where all these processes can be mechanized. So that's probably the only regret I have. The next question is about area of niche for young engineers. I think I strayed into this in my talk. My advice for young engineers is wherever you find yourself, if, for example, you are studying civil engineering or you have already studied civil engineering, look at how you can practice civil engineering with a high dose of tech. What do I mean by that? Whatever you do in your civil engineering practice, let it be driven by technology. Let it be heavily driven by application of technology. And you know the technologies I'm talking about. And if you do this, you find that once you get a hold on technology, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it is coding, whatever it is, whether it is modeling, digital modeling, whether it is application of big data, once you get a hold on it, you find that the application will become easy anywhere you find yourself. So I think the niche I would like to tell engineers is learn tech, all those digital systems that can enable you do better what you would have been able to do without it. And then the final one is from my good friend, Professor Longe. How do we solve the Japa syndrome? I don't know the solution, whether it will come from government side or those who are Japaing. Incidentally, I'm one of those. In fact, almost on a weekly basis, I have like 10 to 20 requests for recommendation for people to Japa, and I willingly write. And my own side of it is those who want to go should go. In fact, the good thing is that the National Universities Commission has also made Nigeria to become a hub for university training. Now we have 200 and something universities, and they may even license more. So maybe we can get a point where we become like the Indians, where in Abuja, for example, you may have up to 20 universities and everybody will be studying. So let people study and migrate. The Indians have a very good model. What is happening in tech today, in ICT today, it was because of what the Indians did some decades back when every Indian was leaving. You go to any university in US today, you will see Indians. Any industry in tech, you will see Indians. And the most important thing is I don't know how we are going to do it, but we need to behave like the Indians. An Indian will come, and the next thing, he brings another Indian, he brings another one, but they still integrate with the home country. In other words, while they are there, they have companies that are setting up back home so that those who are not able to Japa can also now benefit from their Japaing. But at the end of the day, the simple solution is for us to fix our economy. Unfortunately, what we don't realize is that nobody will fix it for us. The crop of politicians we have, because we keep blaming politicians, they come from us. It's from us. It's from citizens that we have politicians. And whatever the politicians are doing is based on what you can only do, what society, you can only be a product of the society. So at the end of the day, it still behoves on us as citizens of Nigeria to fix our country. If we fix our country, migration is not a crime. It's not a bad thing. People should be free to migrate. But the only thing is when we are now migrating because of the situation we find ourselves, you find that when you go there, and I am glad that I took the decision right from time not to stay back. When you go there, you find that it's not a bed of roses. You still have to work. The only difference is that here, even when you want to work 2-3 jobs, you may not even find a job. The one you are doing, the pay may be, you may not, the remuneration may not be good for you. So we need to fix our country. And it's for all of us. But beyond that, I think those who want to go, we should encourage them to go. But when they are going, they should remember that there are still people behind. In any case, there is no way everybody will leave this country. This country must continue. And it didn't start today. Some of my colleagues I did PhD with, some of them are still there. The only thing is that now they are struggling to see how they will come back. Otherwise, they may finish there and the debate will be whether they will bring the corpse back or the children will say, hey, I don't have time, we just bury you there. In any case, it doesn't matter whether you are buried in the US or buried in Nigeria. But it's a very serious matter that we need, our governments and policymakers should look into.
Okay. So I think we will take only these two hands that have been raised so that we can conclude for today. I can see Ademola and I can see Ademola Olorofemi. I don't know whether it's the same. No.
My past past presidents, where are you? Are you in your village? This your network is
Okay, can you use the other? You are using two devices. One, can you unmute the other one?
Okay.
Okay, yes.
Are you hearing me on this?
We can hear you now on
yes.
this.
Maybe you can you can log out from the other one.
Well, let me thank Ben for a great job. Well done. I congratulate my friend. I'm aware of at least 80% of what my brother told us today. And of course, I've always been very proud of him. I don't know if he's going to be able to answer this question. And I'm also happy he's coming after me. I knew all the good work he did in raw materials. I was part of it. I was in at least one team, all the compilation, 1 mineral per state, local government, and all of that. Where are we on all of this? It's not only raw materials. Where are we on all? I mean, you practically answered the question when somebody asked a question. But what do we do moving forward? It's painful. Why is it that we cannot get back to this? Is there something the Academy of Engineering or NSE, because it is about government, we won't get anywhere. All the things you did in raw materials, let's leave Nazani alone. How can we utilize one mineral, one party per local government, and so on and so forth? What can we do in the academy? What can we do in NSE?
Thank you. My past president and very good colleague and friend. This is actually the question we should all ask ourselves as Nigerians. And it's in all sectors of the economy. I think the problem we have is the fact that we have very weak institutions. And you see, in all the sectors, you see what is happening. If you take I don't want to name parastatals now, but if you take the issue of regulation, let me take that. We have SON, we have NAFDAC, we have, because this is very important in all the things we are doing in terms of standards and so on. You find out what has been happening to us as a country is once in a while you have a very a prominent DG that takes that institution to very high level, and then gradually everything. So the same thing, if you look at Raw Material Council, probably the same thing has happened. Even before I became DG, we used to have one Aribi Sala that actually started the council. But you find that institutions are not about individuals. If you have a weak institution, even when you now have the strong individual working where he lives, somehow that institution. So issue of sustainability is very important. And by the way, sustainability is a new area of study that engineers should even go into. The problem we have in Nigeria is we have good policies, we have good ideas, we have so many things we have done, but sustainability is a problem. And that is why we start something, we are not able to drive it to its logical conclusion. But we shouldn't lose hope. I always believe that there is a new beginning any day. And so I agree with you, even at the level of the academy, level of Nigerian Society of Engineers, we should all try in two ways. One, in our individual efforts, and two, as institutions. Coming back to the question you asked, I remember during Vision 2020, I was the chairman of the Science, Technology, and Innovation Group. And we thought that 2020 was very far away. Today, we are in 2023. So if I take the document I sent to the then president as contribution of Raw Material Council to Vision 2020, that document is still very valid. And Engineer Olorunfemi pointed at it. It is called Development of Nigeria through the World-Based Cluster Program. Initially, I called it the Local Government-Based Cluster Program. The idea was that every local government in this country is blessed with either one mineral, one agricultural product, or both that can drive commercialization. And so the concept was, because we had identified all these local government by local government, you pick a local government, create a cluster, an SME cluster that will develop products leading to maybe 20, 30, or 40 SMEs, industries within that vicinity. And you give them what they need to survive: power, water, infrastructure, markets. And then they harness research outputs from nearby universities, and this was all written clearly. So that at the end of the day, every local government will have an industrial cluster producing different products based on the raw material prevalent in that locality. When this got to the president then, President Jonathan, he said, no, I should change the local government to what? So it changed from local government-based cluster program to world-based cluster program. So instead of the 774 local government clusters we were to have, it came to about 9,000 and something clusters, equivalent to the number of wards we have in Nigeria. If that blueprint can be implemented, every political ward in this country will have an industrial cluster. And of course, you have to provide infrastructure. By the time you provide infrastructure for these clusters, the infrastructure problem we have in Nigeria would have been solved. You will have electricity, you will have roads, you have everything. But the big question my brother asks is, who will implement this? And that's the regret I talked about. I tried when I got to that level of governance. By the way, we did the pilots starting with the principal officers of government at the time to show them that it will work. Number one place we went to was Otueke with my minister then. So if that kind of thing had been continued by now, maybe we would have gotten to 20 or 30% of the works in Nigeria. Why would anybody be talking about Japan if he is busy processing and making money? By the way, the Indians and the Chinese come as we are running away, they are sneaking in at our back to take the same raw materials we are talking about. So it's something that the young generation, I think I'm one of those who say that my generation has failed Nigeria. I hope, Ben, that your generation will not fail this country. Pick up from where we are and ensure that this country becomes industrialized. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. I think that will bring us to the end of the second segment of this program, and that is the corner kick segment. With that, distinguished participants, we are gradually coming to the end of this program. We are going straight to the final segment, which is the extra time, and that is the time we ask questions, and then the participants will respond. And I want to appreciate the following: Edwin Ahaneku, Engineer Ali Rabiu, who contributed to the sponsorship of this today's prize, and is a brand new phone. As I said, we are waiting for the delivery guy to come. He's very close here, but we are going to announce the winner immediately after that. And the winner has, you can pick it. You know, we normally give 3 days for you to pick it, but because of the festive period, we are going to give you up to a week. Our office will open after the festive period, the short break, so that we can always call to pick up your prize. Now, the question is simple. In what year did Professor ONWUALU become a professor? Go. In what year did he become a professor? In what year did Professor ONWUALU become a professor? Now, sir, you can check the chat box and see the answers. The first person to get the correct answer wins the prize. I'm trying to see my... Okay. So first of all, you give us the correct answer. And now we look at the people that sent in the correct answers first.
Okay.
You give us, in what year did you become a professor?
1999.
Okay, we have so many 1999. So, but what we do is the fastest finger. So the first person to send in the correct answer wins the prize. So from my own end, I can see Esther Adewale. I don't know whether that's the first person you are seeing from your own side. Esther Adewale, then we had Michael, we had Oliver Eze, we have C. Franklin, we have Julia, we have Shakiru, we have Ata, we have Akindele, Alonge, and then we have Ibiyemi, Deborah, and so many others. I think so many people got it correctly, but we are looking for the person that sent the correct answer first. So from my own end is Esther Adewale. I don't know if that is what you have from your side, if that is what you have for your Esther Adewale, you can.
What I'm seeing is the first one is yes, Esther Adewale 517. There is another one 517, but it came second.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Esther, please, can you unmute and show us your face?
Good evening, everyone.
This is a familiar face. You've won prize before here.
Yes, I have that.
Wow. Okay, a very big congratulations to you. That's a Christmas package. We have a brand new Nokia phone, the latest Nokia Galaxy phone. So you are going to pick it up next week after the Christmas celebration. So congratulations. I want to thank our guest, Engineer ONWUALU. It's been a very wonderful time with you. We thank you for the great job you've been doing for the engineering profession. We pray that God will continue to bless and keep you. And to all our participants, we say thank you for participating, and we wish you a wonderful Christmas celebration and happy New Year. See you inside the arena in 2024. Thank you and God bless you. And I remain your host, Engineer Ben O.C. OKOH. It's my pleasure to sign out for the year 2023 as we look forward to seeing you in 2024. God bless you and have a very fruitful celebration.
Thank you.